Welcome everyone to another episode of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Dick Tracy, brought to us by Bandai. Dick Tracy, of course, is based on the film of the same name, and Dick Tracy-related games were released on all the major consoles during the time. However, almost all versions are a little bit different from one another. So here we go with Dick Tracy for the Nintendo Gameboy. Now, this version of the game is a lot better than its NES counterpart, but not nearly as memorable or good as the Sega Genesis version, which just happens to be my personal favorite. When we start a brand new game, we get to see the prisoner being broken out of the penitentiary, which is actually a pretty nice cutscene for the Game Boy, before we jump into the first level. When you gain control of Dick Tracy, you'll be able to look at the bottom of the screen, see your current life count over to the far left, your score below that. You have a time limit, unfortunately, in levels, which really only comes to play in one level later on in the game. You have your current weapon selected, which is underneath that, and then on the far right, the level that you're currently in. Now, each of the levels are broken up into multiple segments, and you can collect clues along the way in order to better have a chance of solving the puzzle that is at the end of each particular level. However, once you play the game a few times, and even if you just pick up a couple of clues, you'll probably be able to figure it out. Overall, Dick Tracy controls okay. He's a little bit slow, definitely, and when jumping from the ladders and over across different platforms, you move rather slowly and can be a bit clunky at times. Here I'm going to drop down and make sure I attach onto this ladder as I'm falling so I can continue with the right bypassing a couple of enemies. There's not a lot of shortcutting you can really do in the game, but a few here and there, like this one here where I drop straight all the way down really far, but still land safely on the right side. You have a few different weapons at your disposal that you can pick up in the different levels, and you can change at any time using the select button. When you make it to the beginning of the next area, be very careful of the chandelier. Kind of lure it to start falling and then back away from it. You probably noticed that we didn't really fight a whole lot of enemies in the first area. However, the enemies definitely become more aggressive, and in smaller areas, like for example this, where there's not really a lot of planes to be jumping on and over enemies, you gotta take them out. These first few guys are just gonna fire kind of straight at us, and when we get close we can just punch them with our fist. The bigger guys, though, will take a couple of hits with your fist in order to deal with them. Since you have a limited supply of ammunition at a given time, you will use your fist more often than using the guns. At least, that's what I find myself doing. Always be very careful when moving through here of the chandeliers above. You back away when you need to. And any enemy with a gun, usually you're going to let one bullet fly by at least before trying to inch your way closer. Sometimes you may have to duck under 2 or 3 bullets before you're able to get close enough to deliver a hit to the enemy. There is a good amount of health spread out throughout different areas of the game to give you plenty of it. However, that doesn't mean you can just kind of walk through enemies. You still need to take your time at spots and take them out. It can be difficult here during this segment with these guys kind of pointing down at you for you to be able to jump up into the air and take them out. Then you're introduced to the knife guys right after that, and these guys are very annoying because of the way they throw the knives at you, along with the Uzi enemies. These guys will fire out multiple bullets at a given time, so you'll have to dodge and wait for them to dissipate before you're able to get in close. Now also, when enemies are firing at you, if they're ducking or crouching, sometimes you can get up really close to an enemy and actually just stand between them and the gun in their harm, and you'll be able to actually punch them and not take damage from their gunshots. It's one of those weird quirks, I guess, of the game. One random item I did pick up from one of those enemies in particular was a star, which if you're able to find a star from an enemy drop or find it in the level, you instantly get all your health back. Sometimes when you try to take a shortcut from an upper ledge, you won't be able to fall all the way in the direction you want to because the screen will stop scrolling. This is one of those annoyances, I guess, to try to prevent you from taking too many shortcuts. Now it's time for the first boss battle of the game. Start moving upwards, and this guy will throw down tires on you, a little bit similar to the barrels from Donkey Kong as you're climbing up. When you do make it, though, to the top of the ladder, walk over to the boss, stand directly in front of him, and just let him keep throwing the tires over you while you stand right in front of him and keep punching him. You won't get hurt by any of his tires, he'll never move, and you'll easily defeat him. Here is the clue minigame. At the end of a given level, you can earn some bonus points by putting all the correct pieces that you got in their right spots, and then whatever pieces you do put in the right spots, you get a bonus for. Level number 2 is the train yard, and we're going to be chasing down the Brow during the course of this level. We're going to start off by immediately heading over to the right. A couple enemies are going to chase me, but I'll show you right now what you can do is you can actually jump off of certain platforms, and even if enemies are behind you or chasing you, if you just get them slightly off screen, you'll be able to despawn them and not have to worry about them at all. Unfortunately, there's only a handful of locations in the game that you're actually going to be able to use this strat, but there's few chances you might as well take advantage of it. I recommend jumping off to the right here, taking out this gunner before climbing up to the rest of the ladder. You'll notice I like to jump off the ladder just slightly and hold up when I do so. This way I can move up the ladder a bit quicker. Now, another one of those little shortcuts by dropping down. This just saves me a little bit of time, and I don't have to deal with a couple of enemies. Though, of course, your first time through, you may want to go a little bit slower since you're not going to know where pits are and such. For the first time in the game, I'm going to switch over to the Tommy gun, and there's a good amount of ammo here that can help me. And we're going to fire through the enemies. When you fire the Tommy gun, it automatically, unfortunately, fires multiple bullets at a time, which, if there's a line of enemies, like you're noticing during a lot of this area, you'll be able to hit multiple enemies with only pressing the fire button one time. At the beginning of the next area, you're going to start off by jumping over some barrels, duck under this guy's fire, and deliver a punch. The flame barrels are a bit annoying, but the jumping is high enough that you'll be able to clear them with relative ease. As you make it farther in, you will actually start coming to the train itself, which you'll be able to jump on the platform of the train, but only during small sections of the train. It's kind of weird what you can and can't jump on. There's going to be a guy in the top throwing some tires down on us, but we're going to stay on the lower path, jumping over the barrels. We can also grab a little bit of extra health along this way as well. Duck under this guy's tire and punch him a couple of times to drop him, and then just jump over another barrel and continue to the right. Pretty self-explanatory. Not a whole lot of like diversion or paths that you're going to have to take. Just slowly move right. See what kind of ammo they have, whether it's like tires or guns or knives or whatever else, and then be able to either duck or get in close enough so you can try to take them out before you take too much damage. Of course, I recommend climbing up the ladder on the train here so you can climb up and grab a couple of hearts. Even if you end up taking a little bit of damage from enemies, you'll be able to at least replenish that health that you ended up losing. Now, when we make it here, I recommend switching over to the Tommy gun just for a second to try to take out one of these knife guys on the bottom, and then continue to the right. There's a lot of tire guys here, but thankfully the tires end up rolling along the top portion, so you can easily avoid them altogether. It'll take a while to get through this area, but eventually we'll make it into 2-3 for the next boss. Run up to the right. When you get about halfway through the screen, duck down and just start punching. Yep, that's all you need to do. It'll take a little bit sometimes for him to actually walk into your fist because he likes to kind of like stay away and try to jump, but it won't take too long before you drain all his health and move on to the next level. Level number 3 is the docks, and we're going to be chasing down Pruneface in this level. Now, this is where things get a little bit trickier and harder because you actually have to deal with platforming a lot more. There were a lot of pits in the first level, but they didn't have these kind of short platforms and the water below. When you land on certain platforms, it will start to sink, so you'll have to move quickly, and there are also ropes for you to grab onto and swing across different gaps. The core, though, remains of us moving slowly, seeing an enemy, seeing what type of enemy it is, and then preparing to either get close or duck underneath their projectile, then move in for the kill. Be careful here because you'll have to jump to a bunch of boxes that are going to very quickly sink. There is a little platform window in between, and there is an enemy above you, but if you move quickly, you don't have to even worry about him. Sometimes it's near impossible to dodge some of the Tommy gun-esque fire from those one enemy, so usually I try to jump towards them and only take one bullet from them before I'm able to deliver a punch. Wait for the right timing so you can actually grab a hold of the end of the rope, which can be a bit tricky because you have to make contact with the very bottom of the rope in order for it to count. On the far right here, you'll end up grabbing onto the building when you jump, so don't let that throw you off. Be prepared and then jump off to the actual barrels floating in the water itself. At the end of this final dock, we make it to the exit, and now we're onto the second part of the level. Just to the right is a giant hole, so be very careful and immediately jump up into the left and start climbing up the ladders. This is another one of those little bit more confusing levels. You can skip a little bit of the area there by doing a big jump onto the next ladder just above. Now, like earlier with the chandeliers, you also have to worry about light bulbs falling on you. It seems like every light bulb is barely attached, so as soon as you see one of them hanging above, it will fall after just a few moments of you getting closer to it, so be very careful and always back away from them. When you drop off to the right here, you'll land on one of these platforms. Quickly move though, because there's a bunch of boxes falling immediately as you're jumping from platform to platform. When you make it all the way to the far right, you won't be able to keep going right. Instead, what you need to do is drop down a little bit, and once the screen allows you to, you're going to start heading actually to the left. A couple of these platforms will fall away as soon as you land on them, so they're very tricky, and you have to jump nearly immediately off of them in order to keep moving. Be very cautious of a couple of enemies along these platforms and keep heading back over to the left. Eventually you'll come to ladders and you'll be able to actually head downwards, and the screen will start scrolling now back to the right. It's kind of weird the way this level is set up when you think about it logically, but hey, it's game logic, so I guess it's okay. Now that we're on finally the ground floor of this level again, there's a lot of enemies shooting at you. Be sure to pick up any ammo that you need, and I recommend using the Tommy gun to try to clear out as many of these guys as you possibly can. When you make it to the set of windows, there will be a couple of guys that jump out of the windows, but you can just ignore them. It's now time for the battle against Pruneface. We're going to run up close to him, duck down right in front of him, and start punching him right in the crotch area. Yep, glorious crotch punching, but it's going to work to your advantage as you'll be able to avoid most of Pruneface's bombs. If one bomb happens to be thrown very close to him, you may have to dodge that one, but other than that, you should be able to deliver enough punches to him and he'll jump to the opposite side and keep repeating the process until he goes down. Level number 4 has us chasing down Flat Top. You're going to change over to the Tommy gun pretty early on in this level, and I recommend using it a lot. You're going to be a very basic level of just heading to the right with a few platforms for you to jump on, mainly like the bars in the background, but there is a lot of enemies. They really ramp up the enemies during this level, so be prepared and either run away from as many as you can, occasionally turning around when you need to in order to deliver that machine gun-like fire with the Tommy gun. If you see any enemy drop some more ammo for that Tommy gun, be sure to, of course, pick it up. Sometimes you may be able to switch back over to your fist if there's a close by enemy, or if you end up running out of ammo, try to do your best. Jump along the bars and see if you can try to unspawn the enemies, but usually they like to keep chasing you and won't disappear until you finally take them out. Near the end of the level, you'll see a giant stage in the background. You can climb up on the stage, and there's a lot of enemies here, so either run through or try to take them all out with the Tommy gun. If you take the bottom path, at least past the knife-throwing guy, you should be able to avoid a bunch of the enemies and then climb the rope at the very end. Once you reach the rope, you'll get to the exit, and it's time to move on to 4-2. Climb to the very top and knock this guy away from you before trying to now head over to the right side. There's a light bulb waiting right above the boxes, trying to take away that bit of health. You're probably going to be pretty low on health at this point, because that last level was really brutal. So whenever you're low on health, if you have ammo, of course use that up, or just take your time really slowly to try to sneak up more on the enemies and take each of them out. Climb up the ropes and take the top portion of this level. Continue along over to that right side, firing Tommy gun fire every few steps to take out the first couple enemies, and then when you make it to this set of platforms, you'll climb up. You can point upwards in order to shoot the enemies on the platforms, but also be very careful, because if you move quickly upwards, one of the light bulbs that is just above these may end up falling on you. Go over to the left side, you can land on this platform, and then keep on moving. There's a lot of light bulbs above. Here you're going to have to jump to this platform. Be very careful that you don't accidentally fall off and end up going down to the bottom again. Make a big leap over to the left side for some more boxes. There's a knife guy, and then a rope that you can climb up to the next level. Once you're up to the top floor of this particular stage, start heading over to the right side using the rope. Make a big leap off the rope, but be very careful, because there will be a guy who pops out of the background. So if you're low on health, if he pops out, he may end up hitting you. It's a pretty straightforward path for almost all of this area, just watching out for the guys as they do fly out of the windows, but eventually you'll make it to the exit and it's time to battle Pruneface. Stay on this far left side at first and start firing upwards by doing little short jumps. Staying on this left side will give you a good opportunity to dodge a lot of his fire. Something we haven't really used yet in the game is the tear gas, which can do a decent amount of damage to enemies, so you can throw that at Pruneface when he's nearby in order to hit him. If for some reason you do run out of ammo, you're going to have to use your fist, and this is where the battle gets a little bit more tricky. Hang out in around the middle area, you can stand on one of the boxes, and then just do little short jumps, avoiding as much of his gunfire as you can. Once he goes down, we can move on to the final levels of the game. Level number 5 is the final level, and we'll start off on another set of docks similar to back in level number 3. You have to make very quick and agile movements along all the barrels that are going to be bobbing up and down in the water. stand on this platform on the barrel and fire at the guy to the right before trying to then jump over there. Once again, there are ropes, so you'll have to land on the very bottoms of the rope in order to attach yourself and swing across. Thankfully, you do gain all your health back in between levels, so if you were really low on health like I was in the previous level, you'll be able to get back up to full health. Sometimes, since you have to move very quickly on those boxes, you may have to take a little bit of damage. The trickiest thing really about this area is, of course, those jumps, and of course you want to make sure that you're always aiming for in between his two legs when he makes the jumps. You don't want to actually try to land on his feet, or else you may end up just going through the platform. When you make it over to this far right side, there's a couple enemies waiting to gang up on you, but after only a few of them, you'll be able to make it to the exit and move on to 5-2. 5-2 is another one of the areas similar to level number 2. Be sure to grab any health that ends up dropping. You want to make sure you keep your health up as high as possible. Now this is another pretty straightforward area. There's some flaming barrels that you will have to jump over, and there's a lot of enemies above you and ones that love to hide behind boxes, so they're really hard to try to hit with a fist. So whatever Tommy gun ammo you have, you're going to probably want to use during most of this level. When you make it over to here, you're going to climb up here and jump over to the right. You'll see another ladder. If you jump from the top, you'll be able to grab onto the ladder and skip a decent portion of the stage and land back safely on the ground and be able to continue moving right. The tire guys are some of the worst as far as hits because it does take several bullets in order to take one out, as most of the other gunner-like enemies will only take one bullet. When you make it over here, you're going to climb up this ladder. Be very careful of the guy waiting for you in the window. Climb up the next ladder, and when you reach the top, we can thankfully jump over this tire thrower, and then you will have to take out the next one. Since it's very close to an edge, one shot will actually end up knocking him off the edge. Jump off to the very, very far right, make a big, huge leap. When you land, you'll probably be near a bunch of enemies, so make sure you have the Tommy gun out so you can take them all out. Next up is the final area of the game before the final boss, and that is area 5-3. This is another like clockwork style area with a bunch of big giant moving gears for us to climb on. Of course, being the final area of the game, it's still filled with all the enemies that we know and love at this point. The knife throwing guys, the tire guys, and of course, the Tommy gun wielding guys. When you reach the staircase on the far right side, you're going to want to climb on up to the top portion, working your way up, watching out for as many of the knife guys' knives as you can. Jump across a couple of gears over to the right side where you'll see another staircase. There's a guy waiting for you, so if you aim downwards and jump and then fire, you should be able to take him out before landing. Jump up here to be sure to grab an extra bit of Tommy gun ammo. If you see one of those windows also in the background, be prepared because the guy's more than likely going to jump out of it. Here we're at the home stretch. When you jump up here, keep firing in kind of a diagonal pattern. You'll usually take out the gun guys and also be able to knock the tire throwing guys usually off the platform with your gunfire. After just a few more jumps, you will land on a platform that will fall away, so be careful of that one. And then when you make it over here, it's time for the final boss fight. Now this final boss fight is broken up into multiple parts. Start off by jumping and grabbing the gun to the left, but then head over to the right, watching out for the tires, and then stand right in front of the boss and keep punching him, just like we did to the boss in the first level. Boss number 2 has the actual Tommy gun, machine gun-like fire. Just walk up close and start immediately punching while also standing directly in front. You'll be able to avoid the gunfire and hit the boss. Next up is the grenade thrower. Get close and use the Tommy gun in order to cause him to start running away. Get rid of the grenade section as fast as possible. Then for the final segment, just stand still and keep firing the Tommy gun at him in order to knock him away, and he will easily go down and you can sit back and enjoy the ending to Dick Tracy. So there you have it, Dick Tracy for the Nintendo Game Boy. I do find this game more enjoyable, even for its very simple, kind of monotonous style gameplay, much more so than the original NES Dick Tracy. However, this game doesn't even compare to the Sega-made Sega Genesis version of Dick Tracy, or even the Sega Master System version, which is kind of a modified and brought down version of the Genesis game. After the credits, you'll see one last screenshot and the end at the bottom, but with that, it's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.